The sickness of the mind is self-created, that only you can take yourself out of. The reality is that when you take depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and trauma, taken together, you are easily reaching 80% of the human population. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to support someone you love who is mentally unwell. And by the end of this video, you will know what to do and, more importantly, 3 things to avoid when providing support. It does not matter how much you love someone, taking care of them when they're going through a rough patch or when they're having recurring mental health problems can be exhausting, overwhelming, and even feel like you've run out of options. You may have encountered this in your own experience where someone puts unnecessary pressure on yourself because they're externalizing their anxiety, or when you make plans with someone and they cancel last minute because they're low on energy. And for those who do show up, you find that they're not present with you because in their heads they seem to be everywhere else other than here. When these conditions become chronic, we call it generalized anxiety disorder, depression, and ADHD. We can exercise extreme tolerance to these behaviors as they become normalized in modern social architecture. However, our capacity for compassion can only stretch so far before we too begin to experience compassion fatigue. I want to share with you 3 best practices that will not only improve your ability to provide support, but will also strengthen your own safety net in the process. It is impossible to look after someone else when it's coming at the expense of your own mental health. Even with the best intentions, this is a recipe for disaster. Take care of yourself first, even when it feels counterintuitive. The sad reality is that many people find themselves in the position of caretaker rather than caregiver, simply because looking after someone else is a way of avoiding their own problems. The first thing to avoid is deriving a sense of meaning from someone else's suffering. This addiction to drama is a form of self-torture and will inevitably lead to secondary trauma. Make it a habit of looking after this body first. A fast and easy way to do this is creating space for yourself, both physically and psychologically. You can do this simply by taking a walk outside, spending time in a different room, or treating yourself to something special. If you want to learn more about self-compassion, you can watch my Power of Love video linked in the description below. The simple act of doing something for yourself switches the context of providing care to self-compassion, because when you self-regulate, you become emotionally available, and this naturally removes the emotional wall, and the one you wish to support will approach you on their own accord. There are 2 important ingredients to listening that go hand in hand. The first is the ability to listen in the first place, and this means quietening down the mind to open your heart. And listening does not mean thinking about what to say next, but rather to be present with what is being spoken. Far too often, a conversation enters a reactive cycle because no one attempted to listen in the first place. You might find that by simply listening, people are able to come up to a resolution on their own accord without you having to utter a single word. This leads to the second thing to avoid, which is giving unsolicited advice. This impulse to give advice is a clear example of being tone deaf. Once again, this is counterintuitive and it goes against our impulse to help. However, by not engaging in the drama, we allow them to take a step back from the chaos that they're creating in their own mind. Listening further dissolves the emotional wall created by unsolicited advice that perpetuates the misunderstanding that we don't get them, or don't know what they're going through or how they feel. We all need a helping hand from time to time, but remember, it is not your responsibility to look after someone, but rather it is their own. If you are providing soul care for someone, you're not only depriving them of professional care, but of them developing their own social safety net and circle of care. When we try to do all of the things, we become less emotionally available, and the person that we're trying to support may have seen this and withdrawn from us a long time ago, because we weren't there for them when they needed us. This may seem cruel, but this is perhaps why the people we are most closest to are the least likely to provide support, because of the emotional history. The third thing to avoid is codependency. And by breaking the cycle of dependency, you inevitably encourage them to take responsibility. And a simple way of doing this is by asking them to do things like picking up the groceries or fixing a squeaky door. And it may in fact feel unsafe to ask someone who's mentally unstable to do something, but this simple gesture gives them hope that you still trust them and raises their self-esteem to take self-responsibility. The human species is tribal by nature, and we want to be there for each other. However, this safety in numbers does not work when our sense of belonging is threatened. So by making it a priority to look after yourself, we bridge this gap between each other and prevent the sickness of the mind altogether. So if you want to learn more about how to bridge this gap through the power of love, you can do so by clicking in this video here.